Hey YouTube, how you guys doing? My name is Kyle, you know me as Dragonmar, and welcome to a new video. Today we'll be talking about how I solo queued to Radiant. I'll be giving advice and tips in this video that I would want to give to people who are trying to do the same thing as me, and they ask me, hey, how did you do it? That's what my goal is with this video, at least. If you guys do enjoy the advice I give, make sure you leave a like, subscribe, and tap that bell. Also want to say that I do offer personal coaching. All that information is available in my Discord, and I stream every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday on Twitch. Hope to see you guys there, and let's start the video. All right, so this may come as a shock, or maybe not if you've watched any of my streams, but I never filled. Yes, that is my first piece of advice. Remember, this is all based off of what I did, and this isn't always going to work for everybody, but I never filled agents. I pretty much always played Omen. In the maybe the much earlier days when I was low immortal, potentially I filled a bit more, but the higher I got, I essentially locked in Omen every round. Occasionally I'd play a duelist, and occasionally I'd play like a Cypher, maybe. There's a few reasons for this, and essentially the main one is comfort. I find that when everybody is playing agents that they are comfortable with and agents that they are familiar with, that I always had the best result in my games. Oftentimes when people were filling roles, being asked to play agents they weren't familiar with, comfortable on, knew any of the lineups, new positioning, all that kind of stuff, didn't know the abilities as well, that's when my games always fell apart. When you had a duelist player locked into a sentinel and they would never be able to hold sights, or they'd always be pushing in first, they'd never touch the spike, and it's things like that that really changed my mind and made me feel like, oh, like I need to play what I'm good at and focus only on that, and that's what worked for me. My second piece of advice is I forced myself to play patient. This is kind of a part of that like playing smart mentality, not throwing away rounds and things of that nature. Essentially what happened was the higher I got in rank, the more I realized that there are players that just simply outclass me when it comes to aim. So I needed every advantage I could get. Now, I did focus heavily on improving and sort of increasing my own accuracy and bettering my aim itself, especially with a lot of death matches in there. But the main thing I did that I think really changed how I played is if you go back about a month ago and you look at how I was playing Omen, I was a much more aggressive player in terms of the fights I was taking. Not necessarily the positions I was holding, but I'd always take like really weird fights where it was essentially always a dry peak, and they were pretty much 50-50 fights. I tried to stop doing that as much as I could, and instead I started playing more patient, which means I would let people turn the corner on me, and I would let people come into my sight and then peek them. I wouldn't just challenge them right away always. This is something that's really helped me, because what ends up happening at these high ranks is you turn a corner, and if someone's holding it, you're dead. But if you can use that element of surprise, be patient, and stay quiet on sites, you can sometimes get a huge advantage, especially on defense, and that's where I use this the most. So playing patient to me was a big determining factor, I think, in helping me reach Radiant, kept myself alive, and allowed me to go for some incredible plays on sites, especially when I was staying hidden. Now, the third piece of advice I would give is that you should never be chasing kills. Securing rounds was always priority number one for me. The main reason for this is that once you reach Immortal, your individual performance does not impact the MMR or the ELO or the sort of rank experience or whatever you gain. So it doesn't matter if I got 5 kills or 20 kills in my matches, as long as we were winning more rounds and the round margin was as large as possible. That's all I cared about. And I think that's a really strong way to look at the game overall. Obviously, the lower you are, it does matter, getting MVPs and things of that nature. But for me, that was always my mindset. I don't know if I ever made that very clear, but my mindset was never to be the top frag. I don't play a duelist for that exact reason. That's not what I want to do. I want to play a smart, methodical game where I help the team fill a very important role. And part of that is to not chase kills. So on eco rounds, often I would find myself staying back. When we were in like a 3v1 potentially, I would find myself holding the spike, making sure everything was safe and no one was going around the back somehow and getting some weird planets. I would just run after people. This did impact my kill death, right? I didn't have a lot of kills early on in rounds. Oftentimes I'd start games with 0 kills through like 3 rounds because I wasn't chasing. I was busy smoking, using my flashes for my team. And I think that was really important for me to realize, is that who cares if I'm not showing up high on the scoreboard as long as we're winning games. My fourth piece of advice is that I always favored trades over my KDA. Being a selfless player is sort of unique, I think, to a lot of us in Valorant, where often we find our teammates are very selfish. So I've always kind of been a selfless player in team games. So I figured in a game like this, why don't I actively, talk to my team and communicate that I am willing to be the first one dead as long as you trade me. So oftentimes you'd see this in my games where I would tell my team that I'm going in first and to trade me out. That's a really big thing because that tells the team that no matter what, they know their Omen is going to be the first one into the site and that he's telling them to literally bait him and get the kill, get the trade, take the site off of his death, right? And that's huge because a lot of times people, well, they won't say anything, but they'll silently be waiting for the other player to go into the site to bait them. And that's a big problem. So I took that out of the equation. I said, nope, you guys just watch me die and get this kill, okay? And that works. I didn't care if I died over and over and over, as long as you're winning rounds. You often saw me on my stream, I would talk about it. I'd be like, hey, I may only have 6 kills right now, but we're up by 5 rounds, and that's what matters. You know what I mean? So it's the little things like that, being a little bit selfless in this sense as well, in terms of making sure my team could trade. And oftentimes, by the way, this meant I was entering sites as the first one in. I was going first, which is kind of not really where you expect your Omen to be. Let's put it that way. But this is what worked for me. And yeah, definitely a big part, I think, in hitting Radiant was not being afraid to be the first one dead. All right, my 5th piece of advice is that I consistently played for information using my utility as often as I could. So a lot of what I was doing was using my teleport, my ultimate, for information. This is a big one for Omens because oftentimes we struggle to find a lot of value with our ult, but I've pretty much found spots on every map where I felt like I was getting really, really good info. Another thing I've done is I really put a lot of emphasis on not sort of locking into the ult and letting it go through it, and that way I would appear next to, near the enemy. I really made sure that I was always ready to cancel out of it. And this is big because early on, you guys probably saw me going into my ults all the time without canceling, and then I'd instantly die. And I have probably stopped about 95% of those dumb deaths. And a lot of this is thanks to going into them just with information in mind. So knowing, hey, a player's coming here. There was an ult I did today actually where I ulted into Heaven on Haven ace site. And I was ready to go in there, but then I heard a jet do a double jump and get up into the window with me. And I knew she was up there. So the second I saw her appear, I was about probably a quarter second away. I canceled my ult, and my teammate who was coming up along instantly killed her, right? Had I not canceled, there's a chance she gets around the corner more and actually kills me. So it's these little things where you realize playing for information is sometimes more important than holding onto your utility and trying to find the perfect use for it, the perfect flash, the perfect rocket. Those are the type of things that really get people in trouble in these games because instead of using what's been given to them to take rounds, to get info, to take sites, all that kind of stuff, they end up trying to save it for the perfect opportunity, perfect moment. And so some of the best advice I can give to players is to use your abilities and not just hold on to them for the entire round. Sometimes giving yourself like a literal note saying, hey, use this ability before, like 30 seconds into the round minimum. Always use a molly. Always use your smoke. Always use at least one flash. Things like that can be really, really important for people because it gets them into the habit of using their abilities. So I was always willing to use my paranoia, my smokes, and my teleports, right, to get information for the team and to be selfless and to not just save my flashes just for myself, to use them for my team, to let my jet like dash into ramp, right, on split, which is such a common spot, making sure I'm using things for my team, not just for myself. All right, the 6th piece of advice, kind of a weird one, is I was the spike carrier in the majority of my games. Probably like 60 to 75% of my matches, I think I was the one carrying the spike if it wasn't my sentinel, or if we didn't have a sentinel. So it was just one of those situations where because I do play passive, because I prefer to play more of a support role, I naturally had the spike, right? People would drop it, I'd pick it up. I was often the person picking it up after my team had ran to the site, because remember, I'm normally smoking sites out as my team entries. That's the role of the Omen, to get the smokes down. Then I would flash through site for my team. They would run in. So everyone's on site before me. Generally, I had the bomb. I had the spike. So this seems so, simple. Oh, you plant the bomb. Well, not just that, I was the one who always had the spike throughout these rounds. This is really important because essentially what I kind of made my job is to stay alive, to make sure my smokes were perfect, and then to follow my team in afterwards, right? And what's really important about this is there was never those situations where we forgot the spike, right? As when I was the one carrying it. There was never those situations where if it was my role on the team to have the spike and no one else was picking it up, and I knew that, I would always pick it up and I'd always carry it into sites. Really, really important because it eliminated any confusion. I always had it. And now when you go into some of my, I had a match today where my Sentinel was picking it up most of the time, but then for some reason in one of these rounds, somehow our Reyna got it. And she didn't bring it into the site. She left it behind. We ended up losing the round in large part due to that. And I was like, oh, if only I had the spike, I would have just brought it into the site. It's the little things that go a long way. And being the spike carrier, I think, is one thing that definitely helped me. All right, my 7th piece of advice here is to go for more aggressive post plants. So one thing that I really pushed myself to do is to sort of get off of like the bomb essentially after you've posted on it, after you've planted it on attack. So what I would do a lot is, especially on like a map like Split, it's just in my mind right now, I would always push into screens if possible. And the reason for that is because screens is such a common spot to have people come through that a lot of the times people will like sort of expect it to be clear, and it won't be clear because I'll be in there, you know? So a lot of times I find myself getting a free kill just by sitting in screens and waiting. And I think this was big because what ends up happening a lot in post plants is you'll kind of all just sort of hide around the spike, and you'll want to be in line of sight the spike, and it's just a little bit too predictable for the enemy. So by having someone get a bit more aggressive and to push up a bit more, it creates more space, gives you guys some more map control, and generally will also catch people off guard. Now, most of the time, if someone's there to trade the kill out, you're probably dead. But in a lot of situations, people will go their own way when it comes to retakes, and you can generally get that one kill without being traded out. And that's what I found myself a lot. I stopped just sitting on the spike, started pushing out a bit more, holding more aggressive positions for post plant, and I think it started working out a lot better. All right, my 8th piece of advice, something that worked really well for me, is I did a lot of call outs after I was dead. So I never had someone complain to me that I was annoying or that I talked too much. Maybe I'm just lucky, but I talked a lot in my games on my way to Radiant, and even when I was dead, I'd make call outs. Even sometimes I'd make the wrong call out. I'm gonna be honest with you guys here. Sometimes I say some dumb stuff, or sometimes I mishear a footstep or a noise, and I'll be like, oh, some of the guys here, and they're not there. I think I probably got people killed less than like 3 times with bad callouts through over like 150 games or something, right? So I feel like I did a pretty good job, but callouts are so important because sometimes your team just does not know what you can see on the minimap when you're looking at. A lot of times people are focusing on the game. They're not looking at the minimap all the time, especially when entering a site. If you die first, you can sometimes see, oh, there's a player like back plat. You know, let me just call that out, because you don't know who doesn't know that. And they might accidentally put themselves into a position where they can die to that player. So sometimes just saying that little bit of information is all it took to give my team that extra little sort of nudge in the right direction. And I was always the one doing it. I would say in about 3/4 of my games, I was the one talking the most. And this works really well for me. You know, obviously I'm a pretty, loud, well-spoken guy, if I do say so myself. I'll talk a lot, obviously. So I think it comes naturally to me, but sort of calling out things is important regardless of who you are. And it's a really nice thing to do when you're trying to get the team to work together more. And I definitely saw like the value in it as I was playing my way up to Radiant. All right, my 9th piece of advice is to establish map control early and often. This is a big one for me and something I really believe strongly in, and something that my teammates sometimes didn't always agree with me while I was playing is I would often smoke off mid on maps and smoke off sites where we weren't going in order to establish map control. And sometimes I could explain like my process to people and they'd be like, oh, okay, I get it. But oftentimes I would just kind of do it and hope they understood what I was doing. My thought process is as follows. If I can consistently smoke certain parts of the map to get the enemy team, sort of expecting these, they then have to play around them. and think maybe players are going to come through here, or they're going to make a play off of it. They're trying to get, map control information, whatever it is. So it forces people to stay around those smokes. If I don't smoke, it allows the other team to have full vision, to see wherever they want to see, potentially push, go for flanks, and get extra information. A lot of the times what ends up leading to people losing rushes is that because they've established no map control throughout the round, the enemy team in the first 10, 15 seconds is able to quickly determine that nobody is towards their site. And that's the type of thing that I was looking to avoid. Trying to avoid the fact that, hey, we know nobody's over here because they haven't even made a noise. Let's send everybody over to this site. So by smoking early, I would always establish map control. Now, this is one of those things where I can't really tell how much it helped, but I think it helps tremendously, especially on maps like Ascent, especially on maps like Split, where there's a very, and Haven as well, right? Smoking window, smoking B, on Split, smoking the mid steps, on Ascent, smoking, Cat, or sort of the arch as well, top, mid, doesn't matter where, B-Link. Establishing map control, specifically mid control, I think, is a big one. Helped me a lot, I believe, and something I wish more people did. And finally, my 10th piece of advice, something that I think is really important for people to understand, is that I was always willing to rotate off sites, but I was also always willing to be the anchor. So this is really, really important to understand, is that even though I make mistakes just like everyone else with over-rotating, I would always be willing to be the last person on the site and to kind of chill out, be the anchor, stand there, do my thing, and let the other guys rotate over and go help the other bomb site. Now, the reason for this is because I find that a lot of the times what ends up happening on rotates is that too many people will go, then for some reason the attackers will not continue pushing onto the site, and they'll just beeline it over to the other site, and generally you will not be able to beat them there in time. So what you could do is you could be an anchor, which essentially means you stay on the site, or very close to it, and you just hold that position, and you kind of are ready to run over to your team if they need you, especially if you see the spike, but you are then playing on your other site, waiting and expecting essentially a rotate to come to you. And it's your job to hold them off, your job to delay and allow your team to come. And I think with Omen in particular, that was a really, really great role for me, especially because of my teleport, right? Like we can't deny it. I can just TP across the map sometimes. So that makes it really nice with Omen. But I don't want to go too much into the Omen tips in this video. I want to make a whole other video on that. But yeah, playing the anchor role is very boring. But very important, because there were times when I was able to stay on a site, the enemy team would rotate back to me, and either through a combination of my abilities or my positioning, I was able to delay or kill them before they were able to get the bomb down, win rounds off time, things like that. So very important role, and something I highly recommend for people to think about while they're playing, while they're solo queuing. That sort of, even if you don't say it, just being willing to be the anchor so that you have someone there, very important. And guys, that is where we're going to end the video. So I hope you learned something. This is just my advice, things that worked for me while I was solo queuing, kind of explaining my thought process, some of my ideas, and kind of how I play the game. It is my play style, so I understand not everyone's going to play like this, but I still think we could take things away from how each other play and sort of see like, oh, well, if this worked for Kyle, what can I do to make it work for me? Now, I do want to make a whole nother video on just Omen advice, explaining what exactly about Omen allowed me to hit Radiant, how I was able to use him, and my sort of unique and maybe more passive and supportive style of Omen play, which I think is a little different than how some other Omens do it. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like. Hope to see you guys on stream, like I said, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturdays, 12 p.m. Eastern. And with that being said, hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Take it easy, and peace.